Okay, now let's come to the solo guitar or lead guitar, however you want to call it. For me, it's just a guitar that plays the solo. And in this song, it sounds something like this unmixed. Okay, so first thing I generally do in here is I put an expander. This is basically the same thing as a gate, but whereas the gate just shuts off completely and mutes the whole thing immediately, a gate does it more smoothly. As you can see here, it has more of a slope to it, and you can also put the ratio of that slope however you want it to be. With a gate, it would be a straight line down. I put the attack and release quite fast, the ratio all the way up, and then apply the threshold. So this is basically only to fix some noises going on before the solo and after the solo, because it has more gain in the solo tone. So to avoid some extra noises and noises coming from your hands slightly moving over the strings, you always have the tendency to get some more noise in there. So it's just to smoothly fix this. Nothing big really there. Then what I like to do next is put a very slight chorus effect. I start off with a preset called Nice Crunch Guitar in here. This is a very slight chorus. You see it's a very slow rate of just 0.5. The width is also not too big, but spatial at 50, you see this gives it a bit more of a spatial effect, so it doesn't sound too dead center, you know. I don't like my solos to be too straight in the middle. It sounds lifeless in this way. So with a slight chorus, you can fix that. That gives it a bit more spice. Then what I like to do is a mild compression. As you can see already on the waveform, it is very much evened out because of the gain and distortion in there. But still, I like to put a slight compression in here to make it easier for tapping parts or hammer-ons and pull-offs to still come out at a more equal level. So I put in rather fast attack and somewhat fast, slower release of about 80 milliseconds just in this general area, so it doesn't release too fast. So the approach for this compression would be more to the sustain side of the compression, and definitely not to the punchy side, because in solos you do not want punch in solos, you want more sustain. Then a ratio between 2 and 3 is somewhere in this general area, and then apply the threshold as it's constantly compressing. Okay. Then, of course, very important again, EQ. Same procedure as every track. As you can see in here, I just cut pretty much all of the low end, because we leave this to rhythm guitars and bass, of course, and in the solo guitars we are mostly working with higher notes, so you can cut out all of the muddiness down there. Then I also like to cut out all the fizz up there, and this gives more focus on the high section then, so you get a clearer tone in there. If you listen before and after, you notice what I'm talking about. Okay, then the next EQ, you can see I actually could have packed all this EQ into one instead of having two in there, but never mind about this. Your principle still applies. I like to boost the highs at around 4.5 kilohertz. Remember, don't boost two guitars or two instruments in general at the same spot. I boosted the rhythm guitar at about 3.5 to 4 kilohertz, so the solo guitars having higher notes, I also like to boost a bit higher to get it cutting through the mix more clearly. And then to give it a bit more fullness, you could say, also for the lower notes in the soloing, I like to boost at 1.2 kilohertz, somewhere in this general midsection. Again, be careful, do not boost it at the same spot where you have the guitars. So just keep those a bit apart from each other. Then what I like to do is put a delay in there. As you notice in here, there's no reverb and no delay going on. I do not use reverb or delay on my X3 tone for the lead guitar for one simple reason. If I record a solo in, for example, 2 separate parts, not like in this example here, this is just recorded in one part. But still, if I record in 2 separate parts, I would have to wait until the delay and reverb effect dies out. And then as I record the second part, those 2 things would be interfering again. And this can lead to troubles, because then the delay and reverb of the first one has to die out, and it's pretty much a tiny bit overshadowing the second solo part adding on at the same spot. So to avoid troubles, I like to add reverb. If I use reverb at all, in this one I didn't use reverb, but I add general those kind of echo effects, so in Cubase itself. And this also has one big advantage, because in this way you can really glue 2 separate solo recorded parts together. Unfortunately, I don't have an example here right now, so just try this out for yourself. If you record your solo with 2 different parts, apply a delay in your DAW and not in your amp modeler tone. This really helps. And for solo guitars, as you can see, I also do not use a reverb effect for the simple reason, as I explained in the previous part. It tends to make your whole thing sound washy and all over the place. That's good for ambience guitars, but the solos we want to stick out clearly. So I don't use any reverb on there actually. And now with all the mixing in place, the solo sounds something like this. Okay, then in the song, or in the mix as a whole, it sounds something like this. Again, important automating all the other stuff to be lower in volume. As you can see here, the rhythm guitars I automated again to be a tiny bit lower, so it gives more room for the solo to stick out better. As you can see here, I already lowered the volume of the rhythm guitar before pretty much, because there's a lot of stuff going on in here. So you can see here on the meter, it's at 1 dB, and there's only rhythm guitars going on. And then back here, where there is a lot going on, I automated to be 2 dBs lower. So to -1, and then back here still a bit lower to -1.5. So this gives really enough room for the solos to stick out and not being overshadowed or overrun like an avalanche from the rhythm guitars. And now pretty much everything is in place. Here's one final trick about mixing. Now, as you know, I got the rhythm guitars in here, clean guitars there, ambient guitars are going to this bus channel, and pretty much all of those, as you can see, go into this main cab channel where I have the impulse installed. And now this main cab impulse bus channel, where all the other instruments where all the other guitar channels are going into, I send to another final bus channel, which I call stereo. So pretty much all the guitars are still going through this stereo bus channel at the very end before they're going through the stereo output. Now on this stereo channel, as you can see here, I added isotope ozone just to enhance the stereo imaging, nothing else. And this gives your whole mix, your whole guitars more whiteness. And as I play the mix without the stereo imaging, and then turn it on, you'll notice there's a nice difference happening to the guitars. It really helps to give the guitars actually a bit more fullness. And as you saw on the image here, it gives it a whole lot more stereo width. And now let's come not to the mastering yet. That's still coming later. But let's take a look at the frequency image of the mix. Now, what we want mostly to achieve is a pink noise slope. Now, for the newbies out there, I will show you what pink noise is. So I just put a test generator in here. This is basically just generating sine waves. You see? But it also generates different kinds of noises. I'll just show you what white noise sounds and looks like on the frequency spectrum. Here you see it's just every frequency being played at the same volume. Now here comes brown noise. It's not what you think it is, so don't worry, your pants will still be intact after this. It has this kind of slope to it. And pink noise is something in between. And we want to try to achieve this kind of slope as good as it goes. Now, isotope is pretty cool in this matter. It has such a kind of guide for the slope. As you can see, it has the same falling off of the volume as the frequencies goes up. Now let's take a listen into the mix again and see what the spectrum looks like compared to the slope. As you can see, it's not too bad. So it's going into the right direction. And this is also a great tool. If you see there's a sort of hole in the midsection, you might want to take another look at your guitars. Or if there's too much of a bass bulb going on back there, you might want to take a look into your bass guitar or your kick drum and so on. And this is actually also a very good thing to learn to use. Now here you can already see in the EQ what I do to even this out some more, but we will still come to mastering in the next part. PS, a final thought on mixing. You probably want to spend a lot of time on mixing. My personal advice is do not even think of the word mastering before you are content and happy with your mix. Because really, the mix makes the difference between a good song and a song that sounds like somebody is lighting a live cat on fire. Because if you mess up your mix, you cannot fix it in mastering. Mastering does not generally change your tone. You gotta fix all of this stuff in mixing.